He worked together with Spock on the Treaty of Rome. Before the signing of the treaty in 1957, he was behind the formation of the European Economic Community. In that sense, a no-brainer, considering the money there behind. Shortly before the Treaty of Rome was signed, Rothschild was standing beside Spock, gazing over the Forum Romanum in Rome, when Spock said, "I think that we have re-established the Roman Empire without a single shot being fired." Let's look at another clip in terms of the signing of the Treaty of Rome. Keeps on doing that, sorry about that. There we go. Signing of blank pages.
You sometimes hear Eurosceptics complain that signing up to the European Union is like signing a blank cheque, which allows Brussels to draw as much power as it wants away from Westminster. Well, that could be closer to the truth than anyone had imagined, according to some evidence uncovered by our colleague Alan Little. Alan's been making a Radio 4 documentary to mark the 50th anniversary of the Treaty of Rome, and he's uncovered some intriguing details about what really happened 50 years ago.
The governments were able to say to their electorates, oh, this is purely economic. And we knew there was never any secret that the end was political.
They laboured for 9 months, transforming themselves into a new kind of officialdom. These were the first of the Eurocrats. And they set a certain, now familiar, tone. They worked beyond the gaze of public scrutiny, often in secrecy and without reference to public opinion. They gathered in Rome in such haste that the Italian state printer had not met the deadline. The treaty was not printed. And so, in great ceremony and solemnity, 6 heads of government put their signatures that day to a treaty that was, apart from the title page at the front and the signature page at the back, composed entirely of blank pages. Pierre Pescator from Luxembourg was one of the lawyers that wrote the treaty.
They signed a bundle of blank pages. The first title existed in 4 languages, and also the protocol at the end. Nobody looked at what was in between.
They didn't show that to the television cameras, and the European train that pulled out that day is still rolling.
We're now joined by David Willey, who for many years has been the BBC's Rome correspondent and covered the signing of the Treaty of Rome for the Reuters news agency. David, you missed the scoop.
Well, I missed the scoop of the century, apparently. I remember seeing the signing ceremony. It was very impressive. It took place in the Capitoline Hill building at the palace designed by Michelangelo. It was all very solemn. Everyone was wearing frock coats or morning dress, and there was a large press contingent there, of which I was just a very humble member.
And the idea, presumably, of holding the signing ceremony in Rome on the Capitol, the heart, really, of the old Rome, was presumably symbolic, referring back to a time when Europe, well, was united, albeit under somebody's power.
Well, the founding fathers of the European Union had to go back a long time in history, and they thought logically that all roads led somehow to Rome.
Right. Is that even legal? I mean, I don't know. Can you sign blank pages like that? Just a question, you know. All roads lead to Rome in that sense. Capitoline Hill. Here we have the guys here. Tony Blair signing the Treaty of Rome. This is the extension of that when they tried to bring in the European Constitution in 2004. This is a signing process here in front of Pope Innocent the 10th. Don't know if he was that innocent, but let's leave that for now. Tony Blair, here they are in the Julius Caesar Hall doing some speeches before that time. Romano Prodi, Valerie Giscard d'Estaing, very important in terms of the architects of writing the Constitution and later the Lisbon Treaty. Silvio Berlusconi, lovely man. Tony Blair, the guy who put mass into mass murder in that sense. War criminal. Liar, if you will, in that sense, recently converted to Catholicism. Many people thought that this guy would be the first European president for that reason. But this guy is brought onto the scene instead. Herman Van Rompuy. He's your current EU president. Enjoy. You didn't get to elect him. He was selected. Jesuit trained, Bilderberger attendee. I call this guy the tax man as well. Here he's been signed in with Prince Albert, I think the second of Belgium or something like that. At a meeting at the Castle of Valley of Duchess for a meeting held by the Bilderberg Group on 12th of November 2009, Van Rompuy made a speech about his vision of the European governance. He talked about applying a European Union-wide green tax to cover social security expenses. Okay, great. It's not enough with what they get already. I think it's about £220 from each individual in Europe. That's about 500 million people. Do the math on that. You see the amount of money that these guys are working on or with. So after his proposition of this at the Bilderberg meeting, he was selected president. And as I said, he's now the president. Herman Van Rompuy has some interesting background then as well from America magazine, a weekly magazine published by the American Jesuits in regards to the Roman Catholic Church, writes the following. One interesting thing about Mr. Van Rompuy is his Catholicism, about which he makes no bones. He was educated by Jesuits in Brussels, went on to the Catholic University of Louvain, and in 1980s wrote a book about Christendom as a modern idea. He is, in short, a bearer of the torch first lit by the Catholic architects of European unity, like de Gasperi, Schumann, Adenauer, who, like Van Rompuy, were all Christian Democrats for whom faith and Europe went together. Here is the 33rd issue of the newsletter of the British province of the Society of Jesus. November 2009, by the way. Notice that date, the similarity to when Van Rompuy makes his suggestions. Here's Duke of Edinburgh with Ban Ki-moon, the UN Secretary. The British province represented Father General at the Windsor Castle at the beginning of this month accepted a certificate from His Royal Highness, the Duke of Edinburgh, and the UN Secretary General, His Excellency Mr. Ban Ki-moon, for the work that the Society of Jesus has applied to drawing up its 7-year plan for the environment. Just interesting, you know, I thought that these guys were Anglican in that sense. Doesn't mean that they can't work with, you know, the Jesuit order, of course, but there you have it. I guess this guy as well, don't have heard about some of his quotes. Allegedly, he said that he'd like to be reincarnated as a deadly virus or whatever. He's behind the wild, to bring down human population. He's behind the Worldwide Life Foundation as well, so I guess he doesn't have any objections in terms of the green taxes and all that stuff too. After the failure of the constitutional treaty, I'm beginning to round up here now for you guys who want to take a break, but just a few more slides, a few more notes here. After the failure of the constitutional treaty in 2005, as mentioned before, the Eurocrats whip up the Lisbon Treaty. The Dutch and the French voted no, so they turn it over into a treaty and says, you know, let's not vote on this thing then. Okay, bring it in. The leaders are here at the Jerónimos Monastery in Portugal, in Lisbon, posing as they were. Ireland was the only country, as you probably know, who voted for the Lisbon Treaty, the implementation of that. They said no in 2008. Eurocrats say, no, that's wrong, bringing in the economic situation. They vote yes in 2009, and now we're all under the Treaty of Lisbon. It was signed on December 13th. This is symbolic, a symbolic date, if you ask me. This is St. Lucy's Day, or Lucia, as we say in Swedish, and actually a holiday celebrated primarily in Sweden and in northern Italy. She's the patron saint. Lucy is the patron saint of the blind. Lucy, Lucia, Lucifer, light, all the story again. Here she is with the eyes, of course, right there. And she's the bringer of light in that sense. It's happening at the darkest point of the year, 13th of December, according to the old Julian calendar of counting. So it's interesting, symbolic date. They do a lot of things on a symbolic note. BBC says a symbol of the building of the modern world. When the guys signed the Treaty of Lisbon, go into some detail in terms of the Jerónimos Monastery, as I mentioned before, designed by King Manuel I to commemorate Vasco da Gama's voyage to India. It's a hermitage where the monks of the Order of the Christ, a Portuguese successor to the Knights of Templar, were residing. Henry the Navigator is featured prominently there, which connects with maritime symbolism, navigation, sea, Virgin Mary even in the extension. This is some of the pictures from the interior there, with corals and ropes, and beautifully decorated. The signing of the Lisbon Treaty. What happened in the UK then? The Queen signed what they call goatskins, instruments of ratification, as they call it. Both houses of Parliament had to pass the Lisbon Treaty. They are then sealed, bound in blue leather, deposited with the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Rome. So again, we're back to Rome, and things that the royal British family is doing, signing documents, is ending up in Rome. The Knights of Malta, military arm of the Vatican,